What's going on, everybody? Let's jump into it. We are going to discuss the fights that happened this weekend, the post-fight recap. Let's get into it. Let's not waste time. Let's step into it from where we started the breakdown at the bottom of the card. Let's start with Ben Whittaker and Liam Cameron fight to a draw. What did you think about this fight? What stuck out to you in this fight? I felt like this fight was a very interesting fight with a very interesting finish. Ben Whittaker was facing some resistance against Liam Cameron. As I mentioned in the breakdown, this was a step up fight for Ben Whittaker. From the small sample size that we've seen, man, Cameron looked like he was moving Whittaker and hitting him cleanly, almost at will, almost whenever he really wanted to. Whittaker took those shots well, but some of those shots, he didn't need to take those shots. He's too athletic, too explosive with his movements, too quick to just be getting hit cleanly against a slower fighter in Liam Cameron. And it's not like Liam Cameron was disguising his attacks. I felt like it was clear to kind of see what he was going to do, but for whatever reason, it didn't seem like Ben Whittaker really respected what was coming at his way and really didn't seem fully locked in, right? He didn't seem like that guy that we've seen in previous fights, but we knew when you go up against resistance, you're going to move and act a little bit differently. And personally, I didn't think he looked too good that fight. Looked like he was struggling a little bit. Even though he was still doing some good things offensively, it didn't look like it was hurting Cameron too much or discourage him from coming forward. And then he ended up tumbling over the ropes. Like it both meant tumbling over the ropes. I've watched that from a couple different angles. You know, many people thought that Ben Whittaker was losing the fight, so he was looking for a way out. Some people thought that he was tired, so he didn't want to continue anymore, but he was looking for a way out. It's been more excuses about him not wanting to finish the fight that I've been seeing online. Right? It is what it is, right? Like when situations, stuff like this happen, all we can have is accusations about it and create the story and create the narrative until we get to see a rematch, if they do take that rematch. But I'll tell you what, man, it would have been very interesting to see how that fight was going to play out the longer that it went. That's my thoughts on that. Perhaps we'll see a rematch again. It would have been a very interesting finish. Whittaker needs much more improvement if he wants to climb to the top. If he is kind of struggling right now with Liam Cameron, and Cameron's a good, solid fighter, good opposition, tough, durable fighter, but if he's struggling with Cameron, it only gets harder the more that your competition steps up. But hopefully he recovers from the injury and he gets back into form, gets back into the ring, and we get to see that rematch. Let's keep things pushing, man. Let's go to Skye Nicolson. She wins unanimous decision victory over Raven Chapman. What did you think about this fight? What'd you like? What you did not like? I thought the only way that Skye Nicolson was going to lose this fight was if she got sucked into fighting Chapman's fight. If Chapman could cut off the ring and punch in combinations, she could outwork and overpower Skye Nicolson. But that wasn't the case on the night, man. I felt like Skye found her groove somewhere in that third to fourth round, and she never really looked back. She never made herself a sitting duck at any moment in this fight and made it an easy target for Chapman. Chapman tried to force the fight. She tried to press the pace of the fight, but she found herself just chasing Skye Nicolson around the ring. And if you can't get Skye Nicolson uncomfortable and find a way to slow her up, it's going to be a long night. She's going to use her footwork and her reach and that jab and that quick left hand to slow you up and score points every single round and box her way to a victory. And that's exactly what she did, and that's what it looked like to me. So whether you like Skye Nicolson or not, that woman is a technician. And if you can't get under her skin or fluster her or close the gap or use your physicality to your advantage and just make it a rough and grueling fight, she's going to use her footwork and, as I said, her length and reach to her advantage, and she's going to make it a frustrating night for her opponents. So thought it was a good win. And let's keep things pushing, man. Let's keep going up the card. Let's talk about Chris Eubank Jr. He stops Kamil Szeremeta in the 7th round. I forgot how many knockdowns was scored in that fight. Maybe 3, maybe 4 before the stoppage. As I said in the breakdown, if Chris Eubank was locked in, he would be able to close out the show. Now, a lot of people were worried because of Chris Eubank and Conor Benn and all that was happening inside of the building when those two met each other. Sometimes things like that can kind of throw you off of your mark, throw you off the game, and you get distracted and you kind of overlook your opponent because you're focusing on this person right here. So we were going to see how he was going to fare with all the distractions going into the ring. But didn't really seem like it bothered Chris Eubank too much, man. Like once the fight started, like the man did his thing, scored a knockdown in the 1st round, but did take a big punishing right hand from Szeremeta in the end of that 1st round. And he scored another knockdown in the 6th round with a body shot. Landed another shot from the body in the 7th round, scored another knockdown in the 7th, and another knockdown in the 7th before he ultimately closed out the show and they waved off the fight. Now, a lot of people were giving Chris Eubank a bit of slack for his performance. You know, they say this man's not that good and this and that, and he got hit too much. He got hit too cleanly against a slower fighter. And yeah, you know, all of that stuff, there is some truth to all of that, right? He did get hit a little bit too cleanly, but I also think there are certain fights, man, where a fighter goes in and they make up in their mind that they are going to get the stoppage no matter what. I don't think Chris Eubank went into that fight with the respect of Kamil Szeremeta. I just felt like he was coming in. He just walked forward. He walked through a lot of Szeremeta shots and didn't show him that respect. Chris Eubank is an explosive, dynamic fighter, man. His movements is quick and sharp, and we've seen him be much better defensively. In this fight, it just seemed like he didn't care about all of that. He was going to take his shot to get more of his. And so I'm not going to judge this fight defensively that serious because to me, it didn't look like he was coming in trying to be a defensive guy. It looked like he was trying to come in and impose his strength and size and power on Szeremeta. That's what it looked like to me. And he did what he wanted to do, got a lot of knockdowns, and he got the stoppage, right? And the knockdowns that he landed, man, I mean, Chris Eubank, when he lets his hands go, man, he puts together some beautiful combinations. They're pretty, they're fast, they're snappy, and they're a lot more powerful than you think, man. The shots look pretty when they connected. It was just a good, solid performance from Chris Eubank, and hopefully, man, we see him in the ring sooner than later before the year's end. I'd love for him to fight again in December, definitely early in that new year, because right now, he's generating a lot of good momentum and he looks very confident, and that power seems like he's sitting on those shots a little bit more and generating a little bit more power behind it. Not too much to discuss on this one for me personally, but that's just my 2 cents on that fight and kind of what stuck out to me. Let's keep things pushing, man. Let's talk about Skye Opetaia. He stops Jack Massey in the 6th round. This fight kind of played out like how I thought that it was going to go personally. It was a lot more one-sided than I thought, though. Massey did have some good moments, landing some nice shots here and there, but he got outworked in every round, in every category, in every single way possible. It got to a point where Massey was just a big punching bag, man, wasn't doing a whole lot and kept staying on the ropes and was just getting punched on from the arms, from the head to the body to the chest. It didn't matter where he was. Skye Opetaia was hitting everything, and he completely dominated this fight. It was a whole lot to handle for Jack Massey. It was a lot of onslaught to handle for Jack Massey. Now, Massey is a tough durable fighter, has never been stopped before to that point. So I'm glad that his corner threw in the towel, because he did not need to take all of that punishment, man. The longer that fight was going to go on, it was only going to get worse and worse and worse, because Massey was slowing down a little bit. He was getting a little bit more tired. And you know, when you're slowing down, you're getting tired, you're getting punched. The man was spitting blood past a certain point, right? Like, it was just getting extremely ugly, but it was a dominant performance from Jai Opetaia, and not a big surprise for a lot of people. Some people it was. A lot of people didn't think that Opetaia was going to be able to break down Massey as well as he did, but it just goes to show the skill set and the level and the grit and the toughness and the engine that Opetaia has, man. It was another big quality performance from Opetaia as he continues to show why he's the best in the division right now. So let's keep things moving, man. Let's talk about Fabio, Wardley, Frazer, Clarke. What did you guys think about this fight, man? Honestly, I didn't even see the first round live. I didn't even see how it unfolded the first round, man. I was in the kitchen, making sure, my pot of curry chicken wasn't going to burn, right? So I heard a big scream on the TV, go over to the TV, and I was like, wait, is Frazer Clarke down in the first round? So I had to go back and watch the full first round on YouTube to fully get to see what exactly happened. The biggest thing for me in that fight that I saw was Fabio Wardley went to the body much earlier than he did in the previous fights before. And because he was going to the body early, it was setting up those headshots that he does like to get. The sequence started with a feint to the body, and it came over to the top with the right hand. And once that right hand connected over the top, man, you could see there was a change in Frazer Clarke's face and body, right? Like, he just kind of shelled up and got stuck on the ropes. And even though he was trying to fight back, right, as most warriors do inside the ring, they try to fight back. But because he was not defensively responsible and seemed like he didn't really get back his legs underneath him from the overhand right hand on the ropes, the next overhand right, it landed on the side of his face, and it looked like it broke his jaw immediately, right? And it was all set up from that feint to the body, and come over the top with the right hand. It was the same shot that Fabio Wardley landed twice, and they both did damage. In the second shot, it was over with. Like, I'm glad they did not give Frazer Clarke the opportunity to get up and to get back and try to get back into the fight, because it was over with. He couldn't move. He looked disorientated. That jaw was completely broken. His face was shifting. So it was a dominant performance from Fabio Wardley. I felt like Fabio Wardley was going to win the first fight by stoppage, and I said I think he would win the second fight by stoppage, but I didn't think it was going to happen that early. I expected another war type of fight, but it was a dominant performance from Fabio Wardley, man. What can you really say about that fight? I mean, it was a statement made. Right? It was a big performance, because Clarke is the more touted guy, right? The Olympic medalist, all of these amateur accolades and this amateur pedigree that he came into the sport with. But Wardley, he didn't have any of that, man. Not a big amateur guy, not a lot of fights in the amateur level, but he's got something about him. You see the athleticism, you see the skill, he's got power, but he's also got that grit and that toughness and that belief and that risk-taking maneuver about him, that he doesn't care about any of that accolades. You have to see him on the night, and whoever is the better man on the night, that's who is going to win the fight, man. So it was a big, big win for Fabio Wardley and his team, and it puts him in a very interesting position moving forward, and we'll see what happens for him. I was not expecting a first-round stoppage, and I was not expecting the shot to land like that. Devastating blow for Frazer Clarke, man. But hopefully take some time, let the team recover, let everybody get back into the way of things, and he'll be back in the ring very soon because he's still a very skilled heavyweight fighter, man. Let's keep things pushing. Let's go to the main event. Artur Beterbiev wins majority decision over Dmitry Bivol to become the undisputed champion. There's a lot of different opinions on this fight, man. Some people thought Bivol won. Some people thought Beterbiev won. Some people thought it was a draw. Some people thought that Bivol got robbed. And that's the thing about boxing, and that's the thing about judging especially, is we're all watching it from different eyes, all watching things from different perspective. I could see a fight that goes either way. I could see a fight that could have been a draw. I don't agree with the scorecard of 116, 112. I don't believe that was the right scoring scorecard for Beterbiev, right? Even though I felt like Beterbiev would win the fight when I was doing the breakdown, 116, 112, I did not see it like that for Beterbiev. But I thought 115 and 113 for Beterbiev, that is what I personally scored it myself. So let's go back a little bit because we can talk about this fight through and through, but the main thing that people are talking about, right, is how this fight is scored. And obviously I want to get your thoughts and get your perspective on it in the comment section below. But we've seen so many fights where it seems like one fighter is doing extremely better than the other one. The first thing that comes to mind off the top of my mind is member O'Shaquie Foster and Robson Conceição. Right? Robson was on the front foot coming forward for a greater portion of the fight, more than Shock was. And he was throwing a whole lot, but a lot of those shots weren't landing, right? Foster was more on the back foot, slipping shots, moving laterally, and fought, I felt like, a dang near perfect fight. And yet, on the scorecards, when it was time to announce the winner, they gave it to Robson Conceição. Refs see the fight differently. Bivol has some nice footwork. He did some really nice things in that fight throughout that fight, man. He was boxing exceptionally, as he normally does, using his footwork, countering, fighting in spurts and combinations like he usually does. And fighting a disciplined, calculated fight like he usually does. Now, Bivol is usually someone who, in most of his fights, if not all of his fights, he is the one that is throwing much more than his opponents. He's outworking his opponents, but this wasn't the case on the night. Beterbiev was the one who outworked Bivol, even if all of those shots did not land and didn't land cleanly. Sometimes Beterbiev, man, he would miss wide. Right? And when he would miss wide, he would regroup, reset himself, and continue to let his hands go. That's one thing Beterbiev did in this fight. Even if he did not land cleanly, he was making sure that he was touching Bivol. Jab, 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 hook, hook, whatever it was, he was making sure he was being consistent and staying constant with his work rate, right? I felt like Beterbiev had Bivol hurt a couple times in that fight, but Bivol never really showed it. He's very stoic. So he's going to not panic, and he's going to tie up to reset himself and get himself out of trouble, right? Very, very smart fighter. I think this fight was lost for Bivol in those championship rounds from round 10 to 12. Round 10, you could make a case that that was a swing round. It could have went either way for either guy. But the optics did not look good in those 3 rounds. I felt like Beterbiev won all 3 rounds. I gave him 10, 11, and I gave him 12. But the optics didn't look good because Bivol was backing up and moving side to side. Now, with someone who enjoys the sweet science of boxing, I didn't really see anything wrong with that. In a boxing fight, you're supposed to box, and you have to use the whole ring. If they give you a big ring, use all of that ring, and don't let anybody tell you any different. It's the sweet science of boxing to get hit and to not get hit, to box your way to a victory. This is the sport of boxing. You don't have to be aggressive to win the fight. So I didn't have a problem with what Bivol was doing, but that's me. That's not what the refs saw. He was not throwing as much as Beterbiev was. And the judges seemed to like that aggressive style more than the sweet science of boxing. We saw that a few times last year. There's no set way on how these judges are judging these fights, and we never get to hear from them, so they'll probably never tell us, right? So even though Bivol was moving exceptionally well, the optics of it, it's like this guy is moving and he's boxing well, but here we have Beterbiev who threw 200, 300 more punches, so he must be the one that's dictating the pace and the pressure of the fight. So I thought it was a good fight. I didn't think it was as dramatic as many of us thought it was going to be as far as knockdowns and things like that. But it was a high-level fight, high-level performance from both men against two of the best in the division. And the fact that Beterbiev came off surgery 5 months ago and then did rehab and then found time to get ready for this fight, it was actually very impressive personally when you look at the entirety of this picture. It's a hard thing to do. And he didn't think it was a good fight either, and I also liked how Bivol, when he lost the fight and the reporters were talking about him about the fight, I'm sure he was absolutely upset and was pained inside, but he didn't use what happened as an excuse. He just said, look, man, I would love the rematch. I lost the fight. It is what it is. Hats off to him. He was the better man. Let's keep things pushing. So I hope that we can get a rematch. We'll see what happens next if they do get it and where either man goes from here. So again, this fight could have went either way. You can make a case Bivol won it clear. You can make a case Beterbiev won it clear. You can make a case that it was a draw. But we also just have to know that refs are going to judge things a lot differently. So I always just try to make sure I'm seeing it from the whole entirety of it. But my question to you guys is, one, what's your thoughts on this fight? Did it live up to the hype? Do you want to see a rematch? And how did you score that fight? When you're looking for a fight, how are you judging it? Do you like the aggressive style or do you like the sweet science type, right? Where you're gauging ring control, you're gauging distance control, you're gauging counters. What do you like best? What did you think about this fight? How did you score it? And of course, everything that we discussed on this card, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I want to hear from you and hear your thoughts. So with all that being said, if you've been watching the video this long, do me a favor and like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. And we'll definitely see you next time.